Hello friends, welcome to the third lecture in the series of quality control in PCR. In this lecture, we will be seeing about the corrective actions in case of quality control failure in PCR, as well as we will see how to avoid the false positive and false negative in PCR, and finally at the end we will be seeing about the proficiency testing in PCR. Now we will see if there are any failures in these controls, what corrective actions need to be taken. If any positive control failure occurs, all samples associated with the control should be considered invalid and negative samples should be listed as potentially false negative samples. If amplification of positive control fails to produce specific amplification product, the integrity of the control and the PCR design should be examined to determine the reasons for failure. When determining the reason for the failure should be documented and the controls and samples rerun. Samples associated with matrix spike or inhibition positive controls that have low or no recovery should be qualified as potentially biased or false negative as appropriate, and the matrix should be evaluated to determine the cause of the interference if possible. For some samples, it may be possible to correct for bias in a test result based on the recovery as determined by the matrix spike. Correction cannot be made if the PCR inhibition positive control shows evidence of inhibition. Corrections also cannot be extrapolated to samples for which matrix spike data are not available. If PCR negative controls or method blanks produce specific amplification products or samples associated with failed control should be considered invalid, and all positive samples should be listed as potentially false positive samples. The source of contamination should be identified and eliminated. For recommendations on cleaning, the source of contamination should be documented, and sample in the batch should be recollected, reanalyzed if possible. If the source of the contamination cannot be identified, additional types of negative controls should be added at various steps in the method to determine where the contamination is being introduced. Three such controls are as follows. First is equipment ban, second is wipe test, third is room quality control test. So we will see each of them one by one. First of all, we will see the equipment blank control. This control is performed by passing sterile reagent grade water or buffer through the equipment and processing the water as if it were a PCR negative control. If this control is found to be a positive, all analysis should cease until the source of problem is identified. Equipment blanks should then be run more frequently until it is shown that the problem has been corrected permanently. The second in the category is wipe test. This control is performed by wiping an area, pipette, or other equipment with a sterile nucleic acid free gauze or Q-tip, and then suspending the tip wipe in a molecular grade water and processing it as a PCR negative control to determine whether nucleic acids detected are part of the normal background or the source of sample contamination. Wipe tests should be performed routinely to establish a baseline for comparison. The third in the category is room quality control. This control is prepared by adding sterile water in place of template to a master mix in the reagent preparation room. These tubes are placed in working areas in the reagent preparation and sample preparation room and opened for 15 minutes. The tubes are then closed and run as a PCR negative control. These controls may be run on a monthly basis. If any of these controls are positive, all work should cease until the source of contamination can be identified or corrected. So we have seen here about the causes of QC failure and the probable corrective actions that can be taken to rectify the contamination or false result. Now we will see how to prevent false positives and false negatives. In addition to the quality assurance and quality control guidelines, specific procedures should be implemented to prevent false positive and false negative reactions from the technique used. False positive prevention and detection. False positive can occur from contamination and non-specific amplification. Contamination introduced by personnel, positive controls, or positive samples, that is cross-sample contamination, can be minimized especially by physically separating work areas. So here we will see the technicalities behind prevention of false positive and false negative results. It can be seen under the heading of product carryover reduction, detection of false positive reaction from non-specific amplification, hot start PCR, touchdown PCR, and the next is false negative prevention. So we will see here one by one how to take precaution to avoid false positive and false negative. So we will start with the product carryover reduction. Product carryover, that is contamination with DNA that has been previously isolated or amplified, can result in contamination of reagents or samples. Several approaches are available to prevent false positive reactions through carryover contamination, including the following. First one is enzyme inactivation, second is photochemical inactivation, that is addition of psoralen after the PCR link the double-stranded DNA and prevent amplification in subsequent PCR. The third one is hydroxylamine treatment. Here the hydroxylamine is added after the PCR and prevents cytosine from bonding with guanine in subsequent PCR. Out of these, the most widely used approach is enzyme inactivation, which involves the introduction of DUTPs, that is nucleotide deoxyuridine, in lieu of TTP, that is nucleotide thiamine, along with the enzyme uracil N-glycosylase, that is UNG, also known as uracil DNA glycosylase, that is UDG, into the PCR master mix. As a result of this substitution, all amplified products will contain deoxyuridine instead of thymidine. The deoxyuridine incorporated into the DNA becomes a target for site-specific digestion by UNG. Prior to amplification, an incubation stage is performed to activate UNG and enzymatically degrade carryover amplified DNA from previous amplicons. The UNG is then inactivated by heating to 94 degrees Celsius and the actual PCR cycles are begun. This procedure cannot be used with nested PCR because it would destroy the product of first amplification. Similarly, it normally cannot be used for the reverse transcription phase of RT-PCR assay because it would destroy the cDNA produced by the reverse transcriptase. However, recently there have been reports of the use of heat-labile UNG that can be used to overcome both of these problems. The second in the category of prevention of false positive and false negative is the detection of false positive reactions from non-specific amplification. False positives can also result from the non-specific amplification of cross-reacting nucleic acids. This type of false positive can be determined using the confirmation protocols identified. The redesign of primer sets or hybridization probes should be used to reduce this type of false positive reaction. Now we will see about hot start PCR. Hot start PCR is a modification of conventional PCR that reduces non-specific product amplification. In this procedure, amplification cannot occur until the reaction temperature is above that where non-specific annealing of primers to target occur. This block in amplification is usually accomplished by using a DNA polymerase that is inactive until higher temperatures are reached. Touchdown PCR. Touchdown PCR is another modification of conventional PCR that may result in a reduction of non-specific amplification. It involves the use of an annealing temperature that is higher than the target optimum in early PCR cycles. The annealing temperature is decreased by 1 degree Celsius every cycle or every second cycle until a specified or touchdown annealing temperature is reached. The touchdown temperature is then used for remaining number of cycles. This allows for the enrichment of the correct product over any non-specific product. Now we will see about prevention of false negatives. False negatives can result from inhibitors from environment, poor experimental design of the PCR, poor primer design, the variability of processing, or contaminants like DNases and RNases that destroy the nucleic acid. There are several procedures that are reported to reduce inhibition, including the incorporation of 200 to 400 nanogram per microliter of BSA, that is bovine serum albumin, to the PCR. However, there are no procedures that work with all applications. That is why rigorous use of each positive control is necessary. Good laboratory practices should be followed to prevent contamination with DNases. So with this, we have seen how to prevent false positive and false negatives in PCR. Now we will see briefly about the proficiency testing in PCR. Proficiency testing programs provide another means for laboratories to assess their ability to perform a particular method and may be an appropriate part of some laboratory approval program. Laboratories should participate in PT programs for PCR analysis of samples. Samples should be analyzed with the laboratory's regular workload and be performed by personnel who routinely perform the method and in the same manner as the laboratory routinely analyzes samples. So, like all other proficiency testing programs, same type of precautions should be taken while performing proficiency testing of samples for PCR laboratory. Proficiency testing samples should be composed of matrix similar to that normally analyzed by the method and be proceeded with whole target organisms. Currently, there are few proficiency testing programs for molecular methods. If proficiency testing programs or samples are unavailable for a particular assay, laboratories should implement alternative procedures of exchanging samples with the same type of laboratories or internal consistency in the results, such as duplicate testing or split sample testing. If possible, the identification of the duplicate should be blind so that the technician performing the analysis does not know that the two samples are duplicates. Another alternative to approved PT programs is sending a duplicate or split sample to an outside laboratory for comparison with the laboratory's own results. So these are the various methods by which proficiency testing can be analyzed. So friends, with this we have come to the end of the topic quality control in PCR. We have seen the controls in extraction process of nucleic acid, in the amplification process of PCR, analysis of post-PCR product. After that, we have seen about the corrective actions and the cause of possible errors in QC failure. We have also seen the prevention of positive, false positive and false negative results as well. And finally, we have seen the proficiency testing programs that can be implemented for PCR laboratory. So with this, I am ending the second part of this video of quality control in PCR. In the next part, I will give you the brief account of PCR controls and the summary of PCR control. Thank you, and I welcome all your suggestions and feedback and queries on the email IDs and phone numbers mentioned here. Thank you all.